how do entrepreneurs manage risks to create value? Remember that we said they do that? We said that they look for change, right? Change was going to come from perhaps technology, which is where I like to look for change and understand it. Look at how that change in technology might be an opportunity. My students all come to Berkeley thinking, okay, I'm going to learn how to recognize opportunity. And we do look at that, but I say, you know, that's not the hard part. The hard part is converting that insight into value. Value for yourself, value for your customer, value for your supplier. You know, the popular term is stakeholder. Popular for all your stakeholders. I mean, valuable for all your stakeholders. So that conversion process is a process, and I like to label that process entrepreneurship. Why do I make a big point here? My point is that many of us are fed a lie by the popular media. And that lie that we're fed is that entrepreneurs are born and not made, that entrepreneurs have some special magic, and some of us are entrepreneurs and other of us are not. And I think that is a dangerous lie. Now, sure, some people are better at some things than others. Some people are better public speakers than others. Some people are better leaders than others. Some people are better salesmen than others. Some people are better mechanics than others. But in all those areas, there are skills you can learn. You can learn to become a better mechanic. You can learn to become a better public speaker. You can learn to be a better leader even. And if you can learn something, then it means there's something to be taught. So entrepreneurship, I want to suggest, is one of these words we learn. But more than learning the word, we learn how to use those concepts to achieve results. Just like in engineering, you have to learn math. Well, that's nice, but not more important, but once you've learned the math and the symbols, you know what they mean, you learn how to configure those symbols to solve a problem. Well, entrepreneurs configure the symbols of business, or the symbolic logic of business, to create value in a very short cycle. And why do they have to create value in a very short cycle? The magic of entrepreneurship is that you don't have anything, or at least you don't have everything you need. You're in desperate need for what other people have. So it means you can only go so far based on your own resources. So in order to get the right to get more resources to continue your journey, you have to give affirmation. You have to give proof of success. You have to give value back to those from whom you're seeking support. That's a management process. That's a process that can be learned. So some people will be better entrepreneurs and other people won't be as good, but everybody can learn and strive to use the tools of effective entrepreneurship. Not different in business school, where we used to say 20 years ago in business school, our job is to create the next CEO of major corporations. That's the job that we had as business schools. And you say, well, look, how many of your students graduate and become CEOs of major corporations? And we'd say, oh, every year, you know, at least one or two of these 200 bright people will become eventually a CEO. Well, does that mean we're failing with the other 198? And I would say no, because you're moving everyone into the dimensions of sharing the perspective and skills of a CEO. So whether you end up as a product manager, a VP of marketing, a VP of finance, you are better able to take into consideration all the issues of the enterprise, not just your narrow skill, but the global perspective. And that's why we teach entrepreneurship. Not everyone becomes the Steve Jobs or the Bill Gates, but it enables everyone to participate in the process in a constructive way and not say, that's somebody else's business. I'm not an entrepreneur. Because everyone has the opportunity to pursue opportunities beyond the resources they have under control. And in fact, that's the literal definition that I choose to employ. This is Howard Stevenson at Harvard University. Some simple words: the pursuit of opportunity beyond the resources you have under your control. The pursuit of opportunity. What that means is that when you as an individual look at your individual and collectively your organization's opportunity, you don't limit it by saying, well, my budget is only X, or I only have 2 people. You see what is the opportunity, and then you engage actively in the process of acquiring the resources you need to pursue that opportunity. So it's actually the acquisition of resources that is the tougher skill of entrepreneurship, not the recognition of opportunity. We all know the guy who has a million ideas. We don't know that many individuals who have ideas and move constructively to achieve things that we're amazed at, because you look at a person's track record over time, they're able to move a ball in ways that we didn't think were practical or available to them based on the resources they had available. So it's about a process. It's not about a person. It's applicable to major enterprises, not just startups. Startups are the paradigm for looking at this process because they're small. They have single market focus because they need to. They're tactically driven within a strategic framework, but the tactics are knowable. You can put them on an Excel spreadsheet. In a large corporation, it's more diffuse. It's more difficult to isolate the role of entrepreneurship, but it's there and it's threaded throughout the organization. So if we look at the singular organization, the small organization, as a paradigm for understanding entrepreneurship, I took the paradigm and I like to draw it in sort of this shape of an S, sort of a lopsided S curve. It's representational of a process that consumes resources before it generates a surplus of resources. The horizontal line is cash flow. So you start burning resources, burning cash and time before you generate cash and profits. Obvious. When you break that into steps to try and understand the process, you can recognize from the shape that initially the burn, the consumption of resources, is slow. You're coming up with the idea, you're communicating the idea to initial stakeholders, potential partners, employees, potential customers. You're engaging in the first full loop of value creation, getting agreement among the people who have resources and who want resources as to what might be a feasible thing to do. But then you start to do it at scale. You start to spend much, you get to that slippery slope where you're burning, you just can't turn this thing off anymore. It's got a life of its own. So the first phase I call pure entrepreneurship. The second phase, strategic focus. Why strategic focus? Because you have a problem right now. You're spending money at a very fast rate. You're desperately acquiring customers. You'll do anything the customer wants. And as a matter of fact, you should at a level, because you want the customer to help to define the product, right? You want that feedback cycle that you're not making the widget, but you're making the solution. And by making the solution, you want the customer to inform the solution so that, in fact, it's appropriate. But if you do too much of that, doing what the customer asks, you're a custom solution provider. And custom solution providers never achieve economies of scale. They struggle with the inefficiency of always adapting to each individual customer's needs. So you might be in a cost-plus business of saying, okay, I charge 20% over cost or 50% over cost, and that's my model. And I can do anything I want because the customer will absorb all the variable costs and allow me my margin on a formula. That's what contractors do when they build our home. All homes are, when you do your home remodel, it's custom, it's hard to standardize. But when you buy a refrigerator for your home, do you want a custom refrigerator? What would it cost you to have somebody design and fabricate and install the perfect refrigerator for you? It would be a fortune. No, you're willing to have a standard refrigerator, good enough, and achieve the great economies of scale of being able to buy something for $1,000 that by and large is great. High quality manufacturing, high quality goods, good engineering, high energy efficiency, all these things achievable for a relatively small price because the manufacturer is making tens of thousands of them. So they have standardized molds, standardized engineering, etc. So that economy of scale, it's what's necessary to achieve high rates of efficiency and gain. So you have to transition from high adaptability to customers to standardization. A lot of businesses, and you might find it here, that surround universities are bright engineering professors who take one or two of their best students and they do projects for industry. Great businesses. Never scale. They don't develop a standardized product. They don't develop marketing. They don't develop sales because they are close to their customer. They're responding to unique needs and building unique, high-end, sophisticated solutions. They make a nice living. That's a lifestyle business. It's not a high-growth, high-potential business. And if this community is going to make the impact that I heard this morning it wants to make, you have to have many of those lifestyle types of value-creating businesses as experiments. But some of them have to convert to higher risk rifle shots at specific markets where they can standardize, gain efficiencies of scale, uniqueness of solution to a broad market, and try and get up that slope. And that's why I call this zone the zone of strategic focus. High risk zone. You're burning money at a high rate. This is where you have less flexibility for change and you're going to make some big decisions. I want to challenge you if you come to me with a tools business and you say, look, I'm the most knowledgeable person at X, Y, and Z. Many people have this problem and I have the tool to solve it. And not only do I use it internally on a proprietary basis, but there are many other people out there who can use this tool and I will sell them the tool to solve other people's problems. That's great. It's a good business. I mean, I said it stinks, but I meant on a continuum, right? Investors will typically, the history is if you study tools businesses, they can be near-term profitable, but their growth rate is slower and they don't create the value that a successful product business will create. Now, higher risk on that product business because you're going to narrow it to a specific customer segment, et cetera, and you have the marketing costs that are much higher. But that's the tension, right? For a happy medium versus going long. The third section is you've had success, you have customers, you're continuing to scale, so you have to standardize and focus on standardization. That's the systems development cycle. And ultimately, you're a successful corporation, and it's the management cycle where you're controlling efficiency and trying to reduce costs and get out the inefficiencies and broaden your market to new sectors, introduce new products, et cetera.